Welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Karen Rice, and it is my pleasure to be sitting here with you this morning and creating this environment where we are gathered through something that is virtual and kind of invisible and absolutely miraculous, because it allows us to practice the sacred idea of two or more gathering. And so before we dive deep into our inspiration and our blessings this morning, I'd like to speak a brief word of invocation to bless this time that we are sharing. So if you'll just get comfortable where you're seated, close your eyes if that feels like the right thing to do. Otherwise, you can just take a soft focus on anything that might be just in front of you as we relax into this sacred space, this virtual environment, this new way of being, where I recognize the presence of God, the one mind. That mind is the mind of God. It is the infinite intelligence of all the universe. And it is not only that intelligence that allows us to communicate when we cannot be together, but it is the intelligence that created all of life, and it is that same wisdom that guides us through change as we are experiencing it this day. And so I bless this time and affirm that things are absolutely perfect in the way they are expressed and the way they are heard. Feeling grateful, so grateful to be here this day. I just release this now and allow it to be, and so it is. So good morning, good morning. I am delighted to be here with you on Father's Day. And so I would like to just take a moment to express my gratitude for that masculine spirit force in the universe, that giver of this seed that brings all things to fruition. And what a wonderful day to just celebrate that father spirit. So I love you all, you dads, and thanks for being you. And I certainly enjoy holding that space for that masculine energy that we need, and are so grateful to also see it balancing with the feminine more and more as the years advance. I brought something really dear to my heart this morning. I was cleaning through an old scrapbook that my mother made for me when I was in my first year of life, and this is the first Father's Day card that my mother bought for me to give to my dad. So, Daddy, I'm thinking about you today, and I'm dedicating this message to my precious father. And the title of the message is very befitting that particular dedication, because my dad was a construction worker. My father was a plasterer, and through most of his work experience, he was getting dirty on the job and creating great things. And the title of the message is Under Construction. And that's a valuable topic and a very timely topic for us to be exploring right now, in that it has tremendous relevance based upon the fact that we have just completed, a few days ago, we have completed the painting on the exterior of our building, and we are delighted. We are, those of us who have been here every day through the process, we are so happy to have watched that process evolve, and for this gorgeous birth of a brand new building that has complemented the neighborhood in a very respectful way. So I want to talk about that process of construction and what it's like to be under construction, because not only is there the exterior work that's going on, but there is also this interior cleaning that has been happening in this very sanctuary, or I should say in the building, because the entire building we've been cleaning and emptying closets that probably haven't been emptied in decades, and really looking at what it is we want to keep and what can we use and what is it time to let go of. So in terms of our physical space, we have beautified the exterior, we have cleansed and scrubbed and sanitized the inside, and it's all a part of a process that is especially interesting that we were given the gift of time in which to do it because of the way we are sort of sequestered and can't gather in the building in a normal way. So as I pondered all of those things and what it means to be under construction, I began to think of the ways that we as human beings living on this planet at this particular time in life, we are also under construction. And it's a very good symbol to look at. It's a metaphor that's just luscious with meaning, because there's a point where just tidying up the exterior isn't good enough, that we also want to really go into that real sacred space in the inner world and take a look at what we can clean up on our inside as well. So I did this great thing. I had been thinking a lot about the day that we created a prayer circle around this building. The official kickoff for the campaign was this prayer circle, and that was 2 years ago. In fact, it was June the 27th of 2018. And we gathered people to come into the parking lot, and you could stay in your car, or you could get out of your car, and people brought candles, and we prayed around the building. Some people drove their cars through the parking lot. Some people sat in their cars and meditated. Some people brought lawn chairs and sat in the parking lot with candles and prayed and meditated. And other people went right up to the building and put their hands, it was a laying on of hands, right on the building and prayed. And others of us walked around the building praying out loud. We had people that stationed themselves in all four directions and remained there throughout the evening. And it was an extraordinary experience. And our intent was to begin this process with prayer and with visioning the building in its completed state. And so I think it's only fitting that one of our practitioners and the person who is the lead of our ecclesiastical team is Sue Witter. And Sue Witter approached me and said, let's do a ceremony now that the building is beautiful again. Now that we've completed that process, let's create a ceremony where we can pray again around the building. So we will be announcing the date of that evening. It's so interesting to me that it was just about this time of year when we did that original prayer circle. And it will be sometime in July, and we will let you know via the newsletter, as well as next Sunday. I'll be able to announce the date. We should have it finalized by then, and I expect it to be an evening in July. So you can look forward to that. The topic that I want to tie together as a theme this morning then, in this idea of being under construction, is about both the way we experience that in the physical world and the way we experience that in our spiritual world as well, or our spiritual life. And we are currently having a global experience of massive change around the planet. And what's beautiful, if you're willing to look for what is beautiful about that, is that we have been united in this process of change. And it's also quite interesting that we didn't have any choice. It's been mandated, not only by the universe and this sort of double pandemic we're moving through, but it has been mandated by government officials that have been telling us what we can and cannot do, and making recommendations in other ways as well. So when I look at that from a perspective of what's going on in the universe, first of all, I would say we asked for it in the way that we've been praying for peace on the planet, for change in the world, for more kindness and less bullying, and all the things we seem to get in this odd, quirky way that sounds rather argumentative. We all have been looking for more of a sense of union. There seems to be that urge at the bottom of all of the stories in the many ways where they seem to be presenting themselves as our experiences. And so as we have prayed for things, there is this universal law that responds to our prayer requests. And we understand that because we understand how prayer works. But in a greater way, I feel as though I get this almost a comical image of how the universe itself, which is really good, it's so much better to say in this situation to call it the universe instead of God, so you're not tempted to try and make it look like a person, right? So there's this universe that everything of life is a part of this universe. The universe has been answering our prayer by putting things in better order and doing its own sort of housekeeping and remodeling. It's only natural then that in our own personal, individualized way that we're a part of this big change going on in the universe, that we be doing our work as well. The remodeling, the remolding, and the redesigning inside of us in terms of our own spiritual understanding of life and the way we desire to show up as spiritual beings on this beautiful physical planet. For that reason, I see it as this immense privilege to be alive now. Yes, challenging, no question, not always fun. There have been moments of it's kind of a lot of uncertainty, moments of great confusion, but it always, for me, comes back to greater clarity in understanding the bigger vision of what's happening in the universe, on this planet, in our spiritual communities, and in our very own lives, in our inner being. Tremendous opportunity for us. The quotation that I found that inspired the naming of the message this morning and the inspiration for me in having a direction for what I wanted to speak from and about, the inspiration comes from Dr. Ernest Holmes in a book that I've been using all year, The New Design for Living. A New Design for Living, powerful, wonderful, timely read for us. And there's a section in that book where Ernest Holmes speaks about mental house cleaning. And that, I think, is the message today. The way that we can combine the two, the physical and the spiritual, and understand what under construction is in a much larger way. And this idea of mental house cleaning. It's actually a subtitle in one of the chapters there. And in that chapter, Holmes speaks to this idea of how valuable it is for us to learn how to comply with the natural spiritual laws of the universe, and that it really is time, and this is always true, but boy, can we apply this right now. It is time for us to figure out how to constructively direct our lives toward a greater good. I'd like to read you the quote that in which he defines this in greater detail. We need to work at clearing away any thoughts, ideas, or concepts which appear to be barriers to the greater good that we desire. That's a perfect start. We need to clear away anything that appears to be a barrier to any of the good that we desire to be experiencing in our life. Any thoughts, any ideas, any beliefs, concepts that aren't serving us in a positive, expansive way, they need to go. So we need to do our work clearing those away. Any ideas that appear to be barriers to what we desire, because we have to grow and expand. And when we grow and when we expand, we break the confines of our own imprisonment, whether it is our own individual thinking or limitations of thinking in the world around us. That's the catch right there. It doesn't matter if it's your own limitations that you don't even realize you're thinking and processing, but it also, those beliefs and barriers that we can expand and break the confines of. It doesn't matter if it's our thought or thoughts that are coming toward us from the outside world, from other people around us. It doesn't matter. We have the ability to break those confines as we choose. This is an important thing for us to consider. As I'm thinking about the idea of doing my own mental housekeeping, I'm thinking of the way we're remodeling, but we're remodeling in that inner way so that the vision, the outward vision we have as we look out on the things that are going on in the world have sort of a new container to see from, so that we can broaden, we can expand all of those things in a greater way. I'm thinking that it's that we are, if you look at the idea of under construction and contractors. Well, we're not the contractor. If you think of God as the great contractor that's in charge of the universe, that infinite intelligence that is a greater power than ours alone, we can align to it and use it, but it's greater than we are. It's like we're the laborers, and we show up at the job site, and all of the supplies are just there waiting for us. And that's what we want to remember, is that if there are limited, it appears there are limited barriers in our thinking, that we are in charge of the atmosphere of our own thought. Now, in a larger way, there is an atmosphere of thought that represents the collective thought, or what we might call the collective consciousness. So I do my work personally. You do your work personally. But we then gather together in this collective way in a unified consciousness. And I believe what has happened is the collective consciousness of humankind had outgrown the container that used to hold it in this tidy way. So that we began to start bumping up against the edges of the container. But as a collective group of thinkers, it's going to take a few more new thoughts, new ideas, new visionaries, people that are willing to imagine that we as a collective group of thinkers can think different, that we just keep adding more newness into that container, into that possibility. And eventually, if enough people are willing to give up their small thinking, we burst open the container. And I believe that's what's happened. What we are experiencing now is a leap of faith. It is a quantum leap that has already unfolded, and we're just trying to catch up. We're trying to figure out what is the newness now in the way that we are being invited to live our own and personal lives. Isn't it wonderful that we use the term thought leaders? Thought leaders are not even just spiritual thinkers. Thought leaders are those who are on the edge of that innovative, out-of-the-box kind of thinking, and those are the things that are now collecting and contributing to that shift in the global consciousness of humanity. So I think that lots of change is we're witnessing lots of change, and it's certain that we will continue to witness change, because we're not quite where we want to be, but it's a thrilling opportunity for us to be willing to participate in our own way. So yes, the mandate came from the heavens, or from the infinite intelligence of all the universe. This bold mandate came that we needed to clean up our act. We needed to sit still for a little while. We were invited to do our own mental house cleaning. I think that's a lovely way of looking at this time where we're sequestered, and there's more to be done. But then I look at what happened as we were painting this building, and I feel that energy, that excitement of of watching things come into form. So we're cleaning up, we're scrubbing, and we're disinfecting and sanitizing, and we're painting, but we're also, in terms of consciousness, doing that same work. We're rearranging our thoughts and our way of approaching life. We're consciously, not all of us, but many of us have woken up to consciously and intentionally choose some fresh approach, to participate in what we want that newness to look like as it as sort of our inner light can glow out into the outer world. In many ways, it has looked like all the churches are closed by appearance. But what we know is the church isn't the building. That the spiritual community is who we are. That's the aliveness of, we have the building to support the community. And I think that it's been fascinating to observe that even though we're closed, we're alive and active. We're in motion. We're doing the work of ministry and participating as a community in all kinds of interesting ways. Who knew we could do this? I would have to say probably not me. Someone said last week, I heard a minister say, if in the beginning part of March, somebody came to me and said, oh, by the way, in a week you're going to have to shut down your building, and from now on, for a long while, you're going to only be able to have a Sunday service in this virtual way through technology. And by the way, that is, again, starting next week, right away. You're going to have to figure all this out by next week. If somebody had told me that, I probably would have laughed or argued that won't be possible, that would never happen. And then finally, I probably would have gotten really, really scared. But see, that isn't how it happened. We got it in a quantum leap. We got all this information, and then all around the planet, spiritual communities figured out how to actively still do Sundays or whatever day of worship that we have. And that's impressive to me. That's one of those places that tells me, in the mind of God, I might not be able to envision it, but in the mind of God, it's already done. So isn't that a lovely idea that Holmes brings us? Let's do some mental housekeeping. Let's use this time constructively, not only in our physical buildings, but in our physical being and in our spiritual approach and our consciousness, our individual consciousness. Nature always intervenes. I love how Holmes says this somewhere in that chapter on immortality. Holmes says, nature will not let you stay in any one place for too long. Nature intervenes so that we might evolve, that we might grow for the advancement of the soul. Those are beautiful words that we want to pay attention to right now, because we have had a demand put upon us to evolve along with this planet that is moving through what appears at first to be a crisis and then turns out to be that which gives birth to our sacred newness. I love that we pray for peace. And I love thinking of a critical mass of people that keep meditating for the future of the planet, for a wonderful life for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and all those who haven't been born yet. It's a beautiful way of understanding how spiritual law works. Instead of seeing this time as a crisis, I am personally moving into this place of recognizing this is the universe responding to us. This is the divine law, that idea of spiritual cause and effect. First cause is always from God. The way the law is saying, yes, my child, yes. But of course, and here you are. Here is your clean slate. so that you might start again and be choosing and be active, and also notice that life is doing this on the part of life itself. It is the instinct of life. So we are looking at this opportunity to unite in our consciousness in new ways, to reconsider what this teaching of oneness really is all about. I have another wonderful quotation from Ernest Holmes, and it comes from our Science of Mind textbook, and with great interest, I will tell you, it is the very first sentence in the chapter on the law of attraction. Listen carefully to these powerful words. Holmes says, healing is a result of the constructive use of a mental law, which the world is gradually coming to understand. Healing, that way we reveal the perfection of our being, the way the body knows how to heal itself and has that intelligent wisdom implanted within it, healing in every sort, is the result of our constructive use of mental law. I begin in that place of asking myself, do I believe it is possible? If I can align myself to that truth and say yes to whatever it is I'm praying or chatting with God about, when I can say yes to be willing to receive the answer to my prayer request, in that way, I am putting my demand on universal law. I am becoming the container to receive the good that I have expressed to God that I desire to receive. And we are gradually gaining a deeper understanding of this truth. I have this idea that enough of us have been frustrated with the way life has been, and we've come to a new place of the way I always like to demonstrate it is, putting our foot down and saying enough. There has to be another way. And then that becomes our prayer request, and our invitation is to expect it, to begin to be grateful for it in its completed state. So let's start practicing gratitude in that very way. And the last thing I want to leave you with this morning is this idea that, in the words of Jesus, be not confused by appearances. I want to tell you, this is very good advice. Be not confused by appearances. When we were preparing to paint, before we could paint, or they could paint, it was really ugly around here. It looked very dirty and awful. They first of all they did a power wash, then they scraped, and there was plaster all over the ground everywhere in different colors, and then there was just chips of things, and the windows got water stained, and it was very messy. And what it invites me to understand is that before anything can look better, before we could make this building beautiful again, it got really, really worse. And that is just how life is. Sometimes we want things to be better, and we pray for things to be better, and it feels like it's upside down. Suddenly we're less happy than we expected to be, but I think that happens because it's that way that as we want it to see better, then God shines that very bright light on all the things that aren't working so we can see them more clearly, and we can begin to define in our own mind that mental image of how we would like things to be. This is true in the physical world. This is true in the spiritual world. Why would life be different in any regard? The bigger the change, the bigger the mess, the greater the reward. And here's where it gets really, really interesting for me. I looked up the term under construction, and I found this definition on the internet. Under construction refers to a building, a structure, or a project that is unfinished but is actively being worked upon. Under construction, it is this project, and it was in one case it was our building, But now when I look at the consciousness of humanity with this ripe opportunity to shift and change and be something it has never been before, in this way we begin to understand oneness. That we can see indeed in the way that Teilhard de Chardin said so eloquently, that the universe is unfinished. It is in this process of becoming, and so are we. We are unfinished, and yet, as the definition says, we are actively being worked upon. So sense, my friends, sense the hand of God in all of this. Sense and recognize the divine intervention, the guidance, the direction, the way that, yes, there is light shining on some pretty tough things to look at, but there's a beautiful reward for our willingness to feel the compassion for each other, for that urge in the way that we do desire to gather again in this building, in this sanctuary, in the way that we can hold each other again, but we can be patient as we wait in this unfinished process, bringing us through while we are under construction. The universe does this very naturally. We should not be confused or waylaid by any of the appearances of any of it. We are being personally, individually upgraded, improved, reconstructed. You know, we're having that download to get the latest upgrade, so that we can then add that to the collective consciousness and be a part of the changing soul of humanity. It is a time to develop a bigger and a fuller and a better mental equivalent of what's possible, and I know that we can do that. Somebody said on a conference call this week, every place of worship on this planet has had to redefine what sacred space is. We have had to redefine what sacred space is, because now I'm here in this chair, and you're not even here in the sanctuary. And yet we have created sacred space. I also heard this, and it resonates for me so perfectly. We're moving beyond theology, and we're moving into beology, the beology of oneness. And I think that's a perfect place for us to pause and just realize that we are invited to decide whether or not we will be receivers of the new vision, whether or not we will allow ourselves to be used by that which is actively working us right now. And will we decide to come out the other side of this remodeled, renewed, and ready to do the work that's now ours to do? I want to just anchor all of this in the words of prayer. If you would just join me for a moment, please. Let's turn within. Let's take this whole essence of conversation and open ourselves to feel the words that have been spoken as little gems, little jewels that have sort of fallen from the heavens. And they're all around us, and we simply reach out and we grab something that is uniquely ours, and we hold it. Something that was said this day that was specifically for our own personal growth. And we hold it tenderly as we recognize together that there is only one mind. It is the mind of God, and that mind is my mind right now. And that mind is what is being activated by the words of this prayer as we ignite into and from that holy space of infinite intelligence on this amazing day where we honor that Father Spirit I recognize that right where I am, God is, and that there is no place where we are limited or we face barriers in any way, that the fullness of the gifts of God are already given. And in our recognition of this great and mighty truth, we become a part of the elixir of healing for this planet. We become a part of the colorful threads of change that are woven together in this new consciousness of humanity that is being born even as we speak the words of this prayer. And I speak a word of health and wholeness and well-being for each and every being on this planet. I feel that space of compassion in my heart for those who have experienced loss, for those who have been deprived financially because of the circumstances on this planet. But I speak a bigger truth, knowing that as we recognize that we cannot be fooled by the appearances, that we are being readied for that which is new, that which is breaking forth through us, supporting us as we move into this whole new consciousness. And so I bless this sacred space and every individual within the sound of my voice, and around this planet, every living being, knowing that it is a great privilege indeed to just show up, to allow ourselves to feel aligned and connected to this one mind, this one spirit, this one essence of life. And feeling that connection, I also sense the stirring of gratitude within me, thankfulness that we indeed are breaking through the confinements and the barriers that have held us back, allowing us to be remodeled, restructured, rebirthed in this holy way. Thank you, life. Thank you, infinite spirit. And I release these words into the divine law, knowing it is already done. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Oh my goodness. Amen. Amen. So I have my offering, and I just would love to remind you, I thank you first for being diligent and remembering to get your offerings here to the center. Here are mine for this beautiful Sunday morning. Don't forget that we have a donation button on the website, WVCSL.com. It's not .org, it is .com, and that'll take you directly to our website where we have a donate button. You can also send us something in the mail, or if you'd like to drive by and see the beautiful completed building, today would be an excellent day to do that. I love you. I love you. Thank you for joining and being here. And I'll just release you at this time. Namaste.